examination and analysis of which would keep the world's scientific communities busy for decades. So now I'm going to just go ahead and name off the years and the expeditions, and they're kind of a summary. It's pretty long, so bear with me. 1897 to 1899 was a Belgian expedition called Belgica by Adrien de Gerlange. This was the first expedition to overwinter within the Antarctic Circle after the ship was icebound in Bellingshausen Sea. It collected the first annual cycle of Antarctic observations, and it reached 71 degrees 30 south and discovered the Gerlache Strait. First mate Roald Amundsen would later lead first arrival to South Pole in 1911. 1898 through 1900 was a British Antarctic expedition called the Southern Cross, run by Karsten Borchgrevink. First expedition to overwinter the Antarctic mainland at Cape Adare, and it was the first to use dogs and sleds. It made the first ascent of the Great Ice Barrier, flat earthers beware, and set further south record at 78 degrees 30 south, and also calculated location of the magnetic South Pole. 1901 through 1904, another British expedition called Discovery Morning, and it used it was called the Discovery Expedition, and was led by Robert Falcon Scott, which the Scott base is also named after. It made the first ascent of the Western Mountains in Victoria Land and discovered the Polar Plateau. The southern journey set a new further south record, 82 degrees, 17 feet south, I guess, and many other geographical features were discovered, mapped, and named. This was the first of several expeditions in McMurdo Sound, which is where I currently am. 1901 through 1903 was the first German Antarctic expedition called the Gauss Expedition, which was Erich von Drygalski. Interesting name. First expedition to investigate eastern Antarctica and discovered the coast of Kaiser Wilhelm II Land and Mount Gauss. The expedition's ship became trapped in ice, which prevented more extensive exploration. 1901 through 1903, a Swedish Antarctic expedition called Antarctic, led by Otto Nordenskjöld. This expedition worked in the eastern coastal area of the Graham Land and was marooned on Snow Hill Island and Paulette Island in the Weddell Sea. After the sinking of the expedition ship, it was rescued by the Argentina naval vessel Uruguay. 1902 through 1904, Scottish, or British, which was Scottish National Antarctic Expedition, led by William Spears Bruce. The permanent Orcadas weather station in South Orkney Islands was established. The Weddell Sea was penetrated to 74 degrees 01 south, and the coastline in Coates Land was discovered, defining the sea's eastern limits. 1903 through 1905, a French expedition called the Third French Antarctic Expedition, led by Jean-Baptiste Charcot, originally intended as a relief expedition for the stranded Nordenskjöld party. The main work of this expedition was mapping and charting of islands in the western coast of Graham Land on the Antarctic Peninsula. A section of the coast was explored and named Loubet Land after the President of France. 1907 through 1909, another British expedition called the Nimrod Expedition, led by Ernest Shackleton. First expedition led by Shackleton, based in McMurdo Sound. It pioneered the Beardmore Glacier route towards the South Pole and the limited use of motorized transport. His southern march reached 88 degrees 23 south in a new farthest south record, 97 geographical miles from the pole. The northern party reached the location of the southern magnetic pole, which, by the way, when you look at that here on the maps here, it is way, way off. So the South Pole is in dead center of Antarctica, pretty much. But the magnetic South Pole is out on the coast. It's really weird. That is crazy. Anyway, back to actual history. 1908 through 1910, the fourth Antarctic expedition from France. And it's I'm going to try this. The Pourquoi Pas 4? I don't know. Sorry, not French. Again, Jean-Baptiste Charcot. This continued to work with the earlier French expedition with a general exploration of the Bellingshausen Sea, discovery of islands and other features, including Marguerite Bay, Charcot Island, Renaud Island, Michelson Bay, and Rothschild Island. 1910 to 1912, a Japanese Antarctic expedition led by Nobu Shirazi. I hope I got that right. The first non-European Antarctic expedition carried out a coastal exploration of King Edward VII Land and investigated the eastern sector of the Great Ice Barrier, reaching 80 degrees 5 south. 1910 to 1912, Amundsen South Pole expedition, led by Roald Amundsen. First to the South Pole, Amundsen set up camp on the Great Ice Barrier at the Bay of Whales. That's whales as in large seagoing mammal, not whales as in Britain. He discovered the new route to the polar plateau via Axel Heiberg Glacier. A party of 5 led by Amundsen reached the South Pole via this route on 14 December 1911. 1910 to 1913, British Antarctic Expedition. 1910, the Terra Nova Expedition, led by Robert Falcon Scott. Scott's last expedition, based like his first in McMurdo Sound, Scott and 4 companions reached the South Pole via Beardmore route on 17 January 1912, just not long after Amundsen. And those 2 stories are very interesting. Can't wait to get into them. 33 days after Amundsen, all 5 died on the return journey from the pole through a combination of starvation and cold. 1911 through 1913, second German Antarctic expedition named Deutschland by Wilhelm Filchner. The objective was first crossing of Antarctica. Expedition made the southernmost Weddell Sea penetration to date, reaching 77 degrees 45 south, and discovering Leupold Coast, Filcher Rhone Ice Shelf, and Vassal Bay. It failed to establish a shore base from which to mount a transcontinental march, and after a long drift in the Weddell Sea pack ice, it returned to South Georgia. That's the South Georgia Islands, not South Georgia, United States. 1911 through 14, Australia and New Zealand launched the Australasian Antarctic Expedition, led by Douglas Mawson. Expedition concentrated on a stretch of Antarctic coastline between Cape Adare and Mount Goss, carrying out mapping and survey work on coastal and inland territories. Discoveries included Commonwealth Bay, Ninus Glacier, Mertz Glacier, and Queen Mary Land. 1914 through 1917, the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition aboard the Endurance with Ernest Shackleton. This is one of the most interesting stories, is the story of the Endurance. There's actually a couple of movies made on this, and I really can't wait to break into this one. Another transcontinental crossing attempt, it failed to land in the Weddell Sea shore party after Endurance was trapped and crushed in ice. Expedition then rescued itself after a series of exploits, including a prolonged drift on an ice floe, Shackleton's open boat journey, and the first crossing of South Georgia. Yeah, that's a really interesting story. We may get one of those. I'm going to try and keep them in somewhat order, so just be patient for that one. 1914 to 1917, a Ross Sea Party in support of the Trans-Antarctic Expedition, which is Aeneas McIntosh, another British. Its objective was to lay depots across the Great Ice Barrier to supply the party crossing from the Weddell Sea. All the required depots were laid, but the process men, including their leader, McIntosh, died. And 1921 through 1922, Shackleton Road Expedition, led by Ernest Shackleton. Vaguely defined objectives include coastal mapping, a possible continental circumnavigation, the investigation of subantarctic islands, oceanographic work. After Shackleton's death on January 5th, 1922, the Quest, which was the ship, completed a shortened program before returning home. Okay, so that's generally the way it went. 1922, and Shackleton's death ended the heroic age of exploration. After this, a lot of things happened politically and commercially, so it becomes a lot different. And after we go through all these expeditions, we'll get into what's called the mechanical age of Antarctica. That's way down the line. We got 19 different expeditions to cover. Probably cover 2 or 3, depending upon the expedition in subsequent episodes. All right, so there's no questions right now. I would really like for you guys to submit some questions to me so I can answer them, because I make the show more interesting. And you can do that by emailing me at podcast at sparkyonice.xyz. You can check out the Facebook page and Twitter. I always check those, and that's Sparky on Ice on both of them. And I think that's going to do it for me for this show. I'll talk to you guys in a couple weeks.